Trump's eyewear brand discontinued, quality control failures exposed. In the world of business, when a brand name product gets pulled from shelves without warning, it usually signals one of two things. Either the quality control collapsed or the liability became too expensive to manage. That's exactly where we are right now with Trump's eyewear line being discontinued across major retail chains. From an investor's perspective, this isn't just about glasses, this is about pattern recognition and what it tells us about decision making, accountability, and the cost of putting your name on products you never actually vetted. You see, what we're witnessing here matters to every American who's ever trusted a brand name, whether you follow business news closely or not. Structural failures in quality control don't always start with recalls. Sometimes they begin with quiet decisions made in boardrooms, cutting corners we only discover when someone gets hurt. Let me fill you in on what's actually happening here because the story goes deeper than a simple product discontinuation. According to reports surfaced by Business Insider on October 15th, Trump branded eyewear, sold through a licensing deal with a Florida based optical company, has been quietly pulled from Sunglass Hut, LensCrafters, and several regional optical chains. The official statement cited inventory management decisions, which in corporate speak usually means something went very wrong. But here's where it gets interesting. Three separate consumer complaints filed with the Consumer Product Safety Commission between August and September detailed lens detachment issues, frame fractures under normal use, and in one case, a lens that shattered during regular wear, causing a minor corneal abrasion. Now, I'm not here to alarm you, but when you see documented safety incidents combined with a rapid, unexplained market withdrawal, that's not routine inventory management. That's damage control. You see, in business, we have a saying your brand is only as strong as your worst product carrying your name. For someone who built an entire political and business career on the premise of excellence, quality, and winning, this eyewear failure exposes something more fundamental than bad glasses. It reveals a licensing model where the Trump name gets slapped on products without meaningful oversight, quality assurance, or accountability. And from a risk management perspective, that's not just bad business. It's a ticking liability that eventually catches up with you. In markets and in governance, patterns of cutting corners always compound. They don't stay isolated, they spread. Now let's break this down systematically because the Trump eyewear situation isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a documented pattern that stretches back years across multiple product categories. According to a Politico investigation published on September 8th, at least 17 different Trump branded products have faced quality complaints, regulatory scrutiny, or quiet discontinuation since 2016. The list includes steaks that were actually rebranded Bush Brothers meat, vodka that used standard distillery stock with custom labeling, ties manufactured in China despite Made in America rhetoric, and that infamous Trump University, which cost $25 million to settle fraud allegations. You see, what connects all these isn't just branding. It's a business model built on licensing the name without controlling the product. Here's the scoop that most people miss. Trump doesn't manufacture these products. He licenses his name to third-party companies who handle production, and he collects royalties, typically between 5 and 10% of gross sales, according to licensing experts interviewed by Forbes. That's a perfectly legal business model used by celebrities from Martha Stewart to the Kardashians. But here's the kicker. It only works if you have quality control mechanisms in place. Martha Stewart's brand survived prison because her licensing partners maintained product standards. The Trump model, according to business analysts at Harvard Business Review in their October 2023 study, operates with minimal oversight infrastructure. The name gets licensed, the checks get cashed, but when quality fails, there's no institutional mechanism to catch it before it reaches consumers. Let me give you three specific examples that establish this pattern, because in business analysis, one incident is an anomaly, two is coincidence, but three is a system failure. First, remember Trump steaks. Launched in 2007 through a Sharper Image partnership, they were marketed as premium beef. Consumer Reports tested them in 2007 and found they were identical to mid-grade choice beef available at standard supermarkets, just with a 300% markup. The product was discontinued within months, not because of transparency, but because sales collapsed when consumers realized they were paying luxury prices for ordinary meat. That's pattern example number one. premium branding without premium substance. Second example, Trump Vodka, launched in 2006 with the tagline, Success Distilled. It was supposed to compete with Grey Goose in the ultra-premium category. According to spirits industry analysts interviewed by Bloomberg in 2011, the vodka was actually produced by a standard distillery in the Netherlands using the same base spirit as dozens of mid-tier brands, just with custom filtration and premium packaging. It failed to secure distribution in major markets and was discontinued by 2011. Here's what matters. The failure wasn't about vodka quality. It was about the gap between the premium promise and the ordinary reality. When consumers feel deceived by branding, they don't just stop buying. They lose trust in everything carrying that name. That's pattern example number 2, the perception reality gap that erodes brand equity. Third example, and this one's particularly relevant, Trump Mortgage, launched in 2006 right as the housing bubble was peaking. The tagline was, I think it's a great time to start a mortgage company, despite every market indicator screaming that subprime lending had reached unsustainable levels. Trump Mortgage wasn't actually a mortgage company. It was a brokerage that connected buyers with lenders, taking fees without assuming risk. It went out of business in 2007, just 18 months after launch, right as the housing market collapsed. According to financial journalist Dan Alexander's reporting in Forbes, the company closed owing over $300,000 to vendors and contractors. But here's what's telling. In the aftermath, Trump claimed he had nothing to do with the company, despite it carrying his name and his face on marketing materials. That's pattern example 3, brand distance when accountability comes calling. You see, these 3 examples, steaks, vodka, mortgage, establish a consistent operational pattern. License the name, collect royalties, maintain minimal quality oversight, and when problems emerge, create distance between the Trump brand and the failed product. It's a model that works beautifully when everything goes right, but it becomes legally and reputationally expensive when quality control fails or market conditions change. And that brings us back to the eyewear, because this discontinuation fits the exact same pattern. According to legal documents filed in Florida Circuit Court on October 20th, just 5 days after the product was pulled, 2 consumers have already initiated lawsuits against both the licensing partner, Innovative Optical Solutions, and Trump Organization entities named in the licensing agreement. The complaints allege negligent quality control and failure to warn consumers about known defects. Now here's where it gets really interesting and why this matters beyond just business news. Robert Weissman, president of Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy group that's tracked Trump business practices since 2015, stated in an October 22nd interview with MSNBC, what we're seeing is a systematic pattern where the Trump name gets monetized without corresponding accountability. When products fail, the legal structure is designed to insulate Trump personally while consumers bear the risk. You see, that's not partisan commentary, that's institutional analysis from someone who studies consumer protection regardless of politics. And it reveals something crucial. The business model that built the Trump brand operates on risk externalization. The potential profits flow to Trump Organization entities. But when quality fails, liability flows to licensing partners and ultimately to consumers who trusted the brand. Let me be clear about something, because this is where the business analysis connects to the political moment. We're not just talking about discontinued eyewear. We're talking about a fundamental question of accountability that mirrors what we've seen in governance. According to a CBS News investigation aired on October 18th, at least 43% of Trump-branded products launched since 2004 have either been discontinued, faced regulatory scrutiny, or generated consumer complaints. That's not a failure rate, that's a business model that prioritizes short-term licensing revenue over long-term brand integrity. In corporate governance terms, that's exactly the kind of risk accumulation that eventually triggers institutional crises. And in political terms, it's a pattern that voters evaluate when assessing judgment and trustworthiness. Here's the constitutional catch-22 this creates and why it matters in our current political moment. On one hand, Trump has consistently positioned himself as a successful businessman whose executive skills transfer to governance. That argument relies on business acumen, quality control, and building things that last. But the documented pattern, from steaks to vodka to mortgages to eyewear, suggests something different: short-term monetization without long-term accountability. On the other hand, if we dismiss these business failures as irrelevant to governance, we're essentially arguing that how someone manages their name, their brand, and their accountability in business tells us nothing about how they'll manage public trust and institutional integrity. That's the impossible choice this pattern creates. Both options have consequences we can't ignore. According to constitutional scholar Corey Brettschneider, a professor at Brown University who specializes in democratic accountability, speaking on CNN on October 24th. The pattern of business practices matters because it reveals decision-making priorities. When someone consistently prioritizes short-term gain over long-term institutional health, whether in business or governance, that's not a character judgment, it's a pattern recognition. And patterns are the most reliable predictor we have of future behavior. Now, that's coming from someone with no political affiliation who studies how leaders make choices under pressure. What he's describing is exactly what investors look for when evaluating management. Do they build for sustainability, or do they extract value regardless of long-term cost? You see, in the financial world, we call this the skin in the game principle. When someone has real accountability, when their own capital and reputation are genuinely at risk, they make different decisions than when they've structured things so profits flow one way and liability flows another. Warren Buffett has always said he evaluates companies by asking, would I trust management with my money if I couldn't sell the stock for 10 years? That's the test of long-term thinking versus short-term extraction. And when you apply that standard to the Trump business model, the eyewear discontinuation is just the latest data point in a decades-long pattern of licensing revenue prioritized over quality accountability. Let's talk about the electoral implications here, because they're more significant than most political analysts are acknowledging. According to a YouGov poll conducted October 19, 21st, right after the eyewear news broke, 53% of independent voters over age 55 said business track record influences their assessment of executive capability. That's not Democrats or Republicans. That's independents, the voters who decide swing states. And among that demographic, 47% said repeated business failures and product discontinuations raise concerns about judgment and accountability. Now, those numbers don't guarantee electoral outcomes, but they reveal something crucial. For senior voters who remember when brand names meant something, who grew up in an era when Made in America implied quality control, the pattern of Trump-branded product failures resonates as more than business news. It registers as trustworthiness data. The institutional damage goes even deeper because this isn't just about one candidate or one election. According to analysis from the Brookings Institution published October 23rd, we're in an era where public trust in institutions, business, media, government, has reached historic lows. When prominent figures monetize their name without maintaining quality accountability, it doesn't just damage their brand, it erodes public faith in brand promises generally. Every time a Trump-branded product fails and gets quietly discontinued, every time a licensing deal goes sideways and lawyers argue about whose responsibility it was to ensure quality, it reinforces a cynical worldview that brand names are just marketing without substance. And that cynicism spreads. It makes consumers less trusting across all brands. It makes voters less trusting across all institutions. That's not political analysis. That's social psychology. Here's the political fallout we're already seeing materialize. Republican strategist Sarah Longwell, who runs focus groups with swing voters for the Bulwark, reported on October 25th that eyewear discontinuation came up unprompted in 3 separate focus groups with suburban women over age 50. One participant said, and I quote, "If he can't make sure glasses with his name on them are safe, how's he going to make sure government programs work?" Now, that might sound like a stretch, connecting eyewear to governance, but it's exactly how voter psychology works. People don't evaluate candidates through policy white papers. They evaluate through pattern recognition. They ask, does this person follow through? Do they take responsibility? When things go wrong, do they fix it or distance themselves? The next few weeks are crucial because we're entering a phase where business accountability and political accountability are converging. 3 more consumer lawsuits were filed in federal court on October 26th, And according to Politico's reporting, Trump Organization attorneys are already moving to shift liability entirely to the licensing partner, Innovative Optical Solutions. That's a legally sound strategy. That's how licensing agreements work. But politically, it reinforces the exact pattern that concerns voters. Profits flow upward when things work, liability flows elsewhere when things fail. And for an electorate that's already skeptical about institutional accountability, that pattern matters more than any individual product discontinuation. You see, what we're watching isn't just about glasses or business failures, it's about something the founders understood deeply, that trust is the currency of democratic systems. When leaders, whether in business or government, build structures that externalize accountability, that trust erodes. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens through accumulation, through pattern recognition, through moments like this when voters see a brand name pulled from shelves and ask the most fundamental question in any trust-based system: if something goes wrong, who takes responsibility? The stakes have never been higher, and the pattern has never been clearer.